Hi, follow me through Vietnam while I crochet a knit-like cable top. I will show you my progress along with our little excursions and my honest review and recommendations here in Vietnam. Let's start with the beginning. Our little backpacking journey started by taking a train from Belgium to Paris, France, where we could enjoy the beautiful sunrise before hopping on a direct flight to Ho Chi Minh City, the largest city in the south of Vietnam. Of course, every moment spent in transport is the perfect opportunity to work on a crochet project. I chose a brown cotton yarn for this top as somehow I associated the color brown with Vietnam. Even though I do not really like working into chains, there is a magical feeling when starting the first slip knot and first set of chains for a new project. Because I wanted to work on this top during the holiday, I did prepare the execution in advance to avoid too much thinking and hesitation during the trip. I tested out a few different stitch combinations. I wanted to create a striped, cabled look that resembled a knitted sweater pattern I saw a while ago. I envision a tank top with thin straps that can be both worn in the summer as a top and in autumn over a crew neck, for example. I finally decided on this pattern with a cable and a stripe in repeated order. In the fashion of good preparation, I measured up a top that had the dimensions I had in mind and figured out the pattern with the number of stitches required for each row. I kept this on my phone for easy access on the road. Now flash forward to the train journey. If you take the combination of a flight with a high-speed rail with Air France, you get to sit in first class for the train, and this feels really luxurious with large seats and ample space. I started the pattern with the stripe and then went on to create the first cable. This is where I ended up before leaving the train to get to the airport. Similarly to the bigger cables of my twist cardigan, I created these using short rows going back and forth many times. While waiting for the boarding and during taxiing, I continued a bit further until reaching already the midst of the second stripe. This pattern is working up so quickly, I'm sure that 3 weeks, which is the length of our trip, will be enough time to finish the top. I might even wear it. Anyway, once the plane left the ground, you could see Paris so well. I could even recognize the Arc de Triomphe and the Eiffel Tower. The flight was quite a long one, 13 hours, so of course that means at least one movie and some airplane food. I asked my boyfriend to film me crocheting, but you can tell he obviously prefers the views of the clouds and thinks you probably do too. We were barely off the ground or the first round of food had begun. We both took the chicken and I really enjoyed the little cheese and the dessert. When finishing up our meal, we were hit with the most beautiful sunset view. Absolutely beautiful. Of course, this also meant that the lights would be off soon. I crocheted further while watching The Challengers, the Zendaya movie. I honestly was expecting the film to be completely different and a bit more about tennis. Anyway, this is where I ended up before going to sleep. At arrival, we had a beautiful clear sky again. I ended up crocheting a bit more in the morning too and landed with around 1/8 of the top finished. Time for some Ho Chi Minh City sightseeing. We took a Grab to the hotel and almost immediately went out for lunch. We were already hungry and looking forward to some Vietnamese food. So hungry even, I didn't let the camera eat first, but just imagine some dried rice with vegetables and meat. We walked around quite a lot and saw some pretty spots along the way, still getting used to the extreme temperature change and trying to wave away our jet lag. We are talking about a 6-hour time difference. We happened to come across the World Championship of Tegball, a sport I had never heard of before. It is a quite interesting mix between ping pong and soccer. We sat down to watch a full match, which was extremely close and therefore very fun to watch. After, we got some ice cream and started walking back in the direction of the hotel. We ate at the Ben Thanh market before watching a breakdance competition on the square just in front of the market. We didn't watch until the end, we were just too tired, but I did want to show you quickly my progress on the top. The next morning, we went out for some luxurious banh mi before heading to the Independence Palace. I thought this was really interesting to learn more about the history of the country and the war that happened not so long ago. Following up is the War Remnants Museum. Similarly, extremely interesting to see and witness all the cruelties that occurred. We ended our day with pho, at a highly praised little spot before seeing the cathedral with all the beautiful lights and walking back to the hotel past the statue of Ho Chi Minh in front of the People's Committee building. Craving some sweets in the morning, we went up a flight of small stairs in this small cute cafe and ordered some coffee, hot chocolate and croissants. We were on a hunt for temples today. Unfortunately, many temples appeared closed, even though the opening times said differently. Apart from this Hindu temple with extremely colorful decorations, we took a grab to the Vinh Nghiem pagoda a bit farther out of the center, and it didn't disappoint. This was our last day exploring Ho Chi Minh City, and this review wouldn't be complete without showing you the absolute complete chaos the streets look like at rush hour. The chaos is the same throughout the whole day, but at peak hour the quantities increase. There are seemingly no rules of traffic and everyone just finds their way through the mass. Our neighbor on the plane described it using ants as a reference, and I completely understand where that comes from. Up until now, I had absolutely no time to crochet. I don't carry the project around all day, and at the hotel we were always so tired we just fell asleep immediately. But today we have an excursion planned to the Cu Chi tunnels and the Mekong Delta, which means there are a few hours to kill in the transport there, which means crochet time. You mostly see fields and nature, but sometimes the occasional temple appears on the way. We did the famous tourist attraction coming out of the very small, well-hidden tunnel. We learned about their living methods, the different traps they used to fight off the Americans. And then we got to step in a tunnel as well. And let me tell you, it is extremely hot there. Very humid, no air to cool off, and extremely small. I was close to a panic attack inside. Walking in a squatting position, careful not to hit your head. Incredible to think that they lived like this. Another 2 hours to the Mekong Delta, or better said, another 2 hours of progress on the holiday project. We arrived at the boats and were hurried on there by our tour guide, passing some fishing villages on our way to the next stop, coconut and rice wine. We also received a selection of foods accompanied by traditional music. Before taking a little boat ride in one of the many rivers between the coconut forest. On the little islands, we used these small vehicles to get a tour, and we tried some homemade honey. On the way back, it had gotten too dark to crochet, but don't worry, we were on a flight the next day to the center of Vietnam, Da Nang. Of course, what is a crochet project without the occasional mistake? I realized at the airport that I had forgotten a stitch at the end of the row, so on the bottom of the top. It was only one stitch, so it wasn't super obvious, but it was clear nonetheless. Should I frog it and go back all these rows? Or should I just add another stitch this row and continue on like nothing happened? Should I rely on the border I'm adding afterwards to hide the mistake? I spent the entire boarding doubting until I decided that it obviously bothered me too much if I was thinking so much about it, so I frogged it. Let's speed up this pain, and we are back to this. By the way, pro tip on a plane, the cup holder or indent can serve as a yarn bowl if you wound up your yarn. We landed in pouring rain. At a distance you can see the famous bridge of Da Nang, or at least if you squint your eyes. I was surprised to see so many shops selling little and large statues. How do people take this back home? Or is it really primarily meant for the locals? What you see here are called the Marble Mountains. There's another famous attraction in Da Nang. We will visit them tomorrow. The flight had some delay, so we landed later than expected, and with the gloomy skies, we just decided to enjoy some of our beach resort. The balcony overseeing the sea was just lovely, and if it hadn't been so windy, I would have definitely sat there to crochet more. Instead, we took a dip in the pool before taking a walk on the beach. I wanted to dip my toes in the seawater, but
it was at this moment he knew. He fucked up.
We found another pool on the property with a much nicer view. We went on to refresh ourselves in the hotel room while it was getting dark out to go eat something in the restaurant. I'm showing you my outfit with the crochet top I made in Argentina. The restaurant was very calm and the food was good, even though it was quite pricey. I crocheted a bit more in the hotel room, but the day still ended up having a negative process due to all the frogging on the plane. The next day, the rain didn't stop, but neither did we. We visited the cave at the Marble Mountain. The entryway shows the 12 zodiac signs, and inside there are quite some beautiful scenes as well. We ended walking all the way up to find this pretty statue. There were even more caves and temples on top of the mountain, or you can get by lift if it works, or by taking the stairs. We had to take the stairs because the elevator was currently out of service. Honestly, the stairs were perfectly fine, and if I had to choose again, I would take the stairs. There are some beautiful sights up there. After we took a grab to the Lady Buddha statue. This is an extremely large statue that also serves as a temple. It's located on the Monkey Mountain, and this name isn't random. We walked around the site as there is much more to see than Lady Buddha alone. It's free of entry too. At some point it was raining so incredibly hard that we had to take shelter under the Lady Buddha and waited for the rain to pass. Back at the hotel, I had the horrible surprise that my rain jacket had spilled on my top. I hadn't noticed, but it had rained so much that the coloring of the zipper had leaked onto my white top. So now I have a huge purple spot right on the front of my handmade top. I was so sad. We continued on to Hoi An, a well-known tourist city south of Da Nang. It has a river flowing through, and it's known for the colorful lanterns and the Lantern Festival, during which wishes are made and sent into the universe by floating lanterns. We arrived quite late and it was already dark, so we were met with beautiful lantern scenes. The lantern shops make you pay to get a photo in front of their shop, but honestly, it looks like a professional background setup. We went for some local street food and bought huge rain jackets, or rather ponchos, to get through the following days, since my jacket was clearly not well suited. I used our on-the-go washing liquid to try and get rid of the huge purple stain, and unexpectedly it worked really well. There is still a little visible purple spot, but it's not as extreme anymore. The next hurdle is to try to get this to dry. The next day we went into the old town to visit the lively streets. We bought some souvenirs, and when we walked back to our hostel, the streets were starting to get flooded around the river, the bridges too. Our hostel wasn't that far away, but shoes were not an option anymore. The water just went up too high. So, of course, we took our flip-flops to continue sightseeing the rest of the day. Strange feeling, let me tell you. We visited some pretty houses, temples, and museums. Of course, we saw this Japanese bridge as well. The city is pretty by day, but it's even prettier at night. In the dark, the lanterns all shine so vividly and full of color. The water had kept rising during the day, and our walk back to the hostel now resulted in water up until our knees. We had planned a biking trip and a basket boat tour for the next day, but with the current conditions, that doesn't seem like the best of plans. So the next morning we splurged on some delicious Western breakfast, as the flutes still weren't that much better. So we had to find activities suiting the weather. We both had a full body massage that started with a little foot bath. We decided to get matching tailored clothes suited for future weddings. Hoi An is very well known for this tailoring. There are a crazy amount of shops offering this, one next to the other in a few well-packed streets. The next day we were off to the Bana Hills, a theme park in the hills with the longest cable car in the world. It's a rather expensive excursion, but we did enjoy it. It is French village themed, so that hit close to home. The French have built it during their occupation of Vietnam, but nowadays it's mostly known for the cable car and the golden hand bridge at the end. We visited on a very cloudy, misty day, so at one point in the cable car, we entered the clouds and everything was white around us. We could barely see the other cars. Quite a strange experience, really, knowing you are hanging up very high in the air. The Golden Hand Bridge was also covered in mist, making it look very mysterious. It has its charm this way. You don't have the beautiful view over the mountain, but the hands do really seem to come out of thin air. The park has many other beautiful statues and some lookout points that were absolutely useless in our case. We spent the entire day roaming around and enjoying the surroundings. There were very few other people, or at least we couldn't see them through the mist. I would also really recommend the buffet here. It is really good. And after taking the cable car back down, we continued our trip to Hue. Hue is the Imperial City. Hue is the former imperial capital of Vietnam during the Nguyen dynasty. So it is home to impressive tombs, temples, and the imperial city. While my boyfriend was showering, I quickly added some more progress to the top. I'm almost halfway now, but also almost halfway through the trip. I got stopped by this horrible knot in the yarn. I hate it when yarn balls have these knots. I usually undo the knot and just continue as if I'm joining a new piece of yarn, but that does mean even more weaving in. We started our day in the Imperial City, where a large alleyway surrounded by a lake filled with koi fish led us to the Thai Hoa Palace. This had been renovated lately and was shining in all its golden decor. Further in the city, there were plenty of other buildings and gardens, absolutely gorgeous and very peaceful. After we visited two tombs, Tu Duc and Khai Ding, both very different but very interesting. We ended the day with some noodles before hopping on a night train to Hanoi. We had booked a private cabin for the two of us and I slept so incredibly well. Honestly, I'm an instant sleeper in trains and boats. The rhythmic motion just does wonders. We only arrived in Hanoi around midday, so in the morning we could enjoy the lovely views of the many rice fields and houses. Of course, I also continued crocheting. It was actually the first time I held the top in front of me to check the sizing. Luckily, my calculations at home seemed correct. In Hanoi, we started our day around the Ho Tai Lake in the north. This is such a peaceful environment with a small temple on the lake and a large pagoda as well. We continued on to the Ho Chi Minh Mausoleum, where we visited his housing and working complex. We later also visited the inside as well, that's only open in the morning. In there, Ho Chi Minh is kept in perfect conditions in a glass box. Seeing someone absolutely intact that died in 1969 gives off a strange feeling. The whole visit is also very well guarded and very strict. Not so far is the One Pillar Pagoda, and we also visited the famous train street. It's just a small street with train tracks and coffee shops and bars along the sides, where every so often everyone must make way for a train passing through. In the evening, we ate some chaka, a Hanoian fish dish that I really enjoyed. Back at the hotel, I have just finished my first ball of yarn. Time to tackle the next one. We participated in an excursion to Ninh Binh, which meant more crochet time on the bus. The pattern really works up fast because I've barely been able to crochet, only during transport times or sometimes at night in the hotel, and nonetheless the top is really getting to a specific shape. We started the excursion with a bike tour through the beautiful nature up until the Buddhist center, and I really enjoy cycling, and with this view and weather, it's just phenomenal. It was followed by a boat trip in Trang An. We remained in the beautiful mountains, nature, but with the peacefulness of the river. We went through some caves. And there are many boats along with us, and each with 4 seats, so it's quite some heavy work for the ladies rowing the boats. We arrived in an island with 4 temples or so that were well maintained, And on our trip back, we passed some replicas of housing facilities from the past. Finally, the last stop of this excursion is the Mua Cave, which is a tall mountain that you can climb up with quite some stairs to see a dragon sculpture and the gorgeous sunset on top. Honestly, the view is absolutely worth it. It would have been even more breathtaking if there were less people on the top. It was very, very crowded when we went, but still a very pretty view that is worth the steps. The steps are very large and uneven, very high, destabilizing you, so even the trip down you had to be really careful. On the bottom there is a lily pond with some pathways through. It wasn't the best season for that, but it was still really pretty. We could enjoy the sunset in its fullest during our trip back in the bus. I could crochet a bit more until it was just too dark after the sun completely set. The next day in Hanoi, we visited a small yarn shop. I didn't buy anything, mostly because I had no space left in my backpack, but also nothing inspired me enough to question this and still find some space in my backpack. We went back to the train street, knowing a train would pass by at any moment. My boyfriend tried the egg coffee for the first time here, and it surprised him in a positive way. As soon as the train arrived, everyone brought out their phones, everyone squished to the side, and although it was an experience, it wasn't that special. Most left after the train had passed and the street was quite empty again. We took a stroll around Hiem Lake. It was during the weekend, so we got stopped by a few young kids, ages like 6 to 12, to have a conversation and to practice their English. For dinner, I ate some chaga again, really a dish I would recommend. And the next 2 days, we had a cruise planned in Halong Bay. That's about a 2-hour drive from Hanoi. We left early because we were the first passengers that they picked up, so I crocheted some more on the bus. Arriving closer to the port, you could see many unfinished buildings still in construction or left behind. The private room with balcony did not disappoint. We even had a proper shower that didn't just consist of a shower head in the middle of the bathroom. We met some other tourists earlier on the trip who tried to dissuade us from going on the cruise. They said it felt extremely touristy and it was just many boats following one another, just kind of a tourist trap. But actually, we really enjoyed it and didn't feel that too much. Yes, there are many boats, but there are even more little mountainy islands, and we really enjoyed the views. We went kayaking on a pearl farm. It had been quite some time since we last kayaked, and I really like kayaking, so I did really enjoy that. Between activities, I had some time to crochet on our balcony, watching the environment and the other boats pass by. Honestly, idyllic. We also visited a very large cave. We had to wait in a long line for it, but it was worth it in my opinion. The cave is really big and shows some pretty stalagmite and stalactite formations. We finished with the sunset over the water, coloring a beautiful orange-red. And look which boat passed by. This can be no accident. This was a sign. I had to film it. We spent some more time on our balcony, alternating with the shower before getting dinner. Oh yeah, by the way, we had lunch when entering the boat this morning and it was a delicious buffet. So we had high hopes for dinner. We had multiple dishes, all presented in a very artistic way. I've passed the midway point right now for the project, working my way up for the first back strap. The next morning, I woke up really early for a Tai Chi session on the deck at 6 a.m. And after we went to the T-Top Island with a beach and a set of stairs to reach the top, where you had another perfect view of the bay and the sunrise. Because it was early and windy, it felt too cold to swim in the sea, but I did take a little walk and it felt amazingly liberating. We really took joy in our little balcony and spent the rest of the morning there talking while I crocheted some more, only interrupted by breakfast. After leaving the ship, we had to wait for another hour or so for the bus to arrive to bring us back to Hanoi. So we enjoyed a little walk around the port and some Wi-Fi at the waiting spot, as well as a bit more of crocheting. Our last days in Vietnam were approaching. We still have an excursion planned to Sapa, which is a region in the mountains up north. Many indigenous people still live here in dispersed villages. The place is mostly known for its rice fields in terraces on the mountain. To get there, we took another night train, and guess what? We passed the train street. So we also saw the other side. We shared the cabin with some friendly Italians, but honestly, with the luggages, the cabins were very small to share between the four of us. We organized a group trip with a local guide to walk around to some villages through the rice fields. It was a very misty and cloudy day, so I was disappointed that we maybe wouldn't even be able to see the rice fields that well. But luckily, we walked further down to the valley and the clouds cleared up. It was very, very muddy, so we had to be careful not to slip. It was very interesting also to hear about the way these local people were living and mostly self-providing. We had another guided tour the next day to the Kat village. The conversation with our guide got really personal. She explained how she was kidnapped for marriage, which is a common practice still for these local people. It was really eye-opening and mind-boggling to see this and hear her talking about it. The Kat village itself is a common tourist trip for the Vietnamese people, where they rent out typical Chinese attire to make pretty pictures and learn more about the traditions. There is a performance of so-called traditional dances, some displays of foods and crafts. Our guide showed us how they make yarn from the plants and wind them up to finally boil them and weave them, combined with the indigo coloring and the pattern making on the tissue using beeswax. I think it's so cool that they are able to make clothes and baskets from scratch. We also participated in a type of dance with bamboo sticks before walking back to Sapa town. The town itself doesn't really represent much. We ate and then we took the train back to Hanoi. The train ride doesn't take that long, around 7 to 8 hours, so we tried to go to sleep as quickly as possible. The next morning, we found this nice little spot for some breakfast croissant and brownie. We visited the Ho Chi Minh Mausoleum before heading to the airport to leave Vietnam. But don't worry, the trip isn't over. We decided to go to Cambodia for 2 extra days to visit Angkor Wat, so we only had a short flight to Siem Reap. We took the bus to the center of Siem Reap, where a tuk-tuk brought us the rest of the way to the hotel. We started the first day with the famous Angkor Wat temple, which is really impressive. The outside is beautiful. It really is a temple in the jungle, but you can also visit the inside and go all the way to the top with a beautiful view and places enough for praying and worshipping. The steps to go up are steep, but they seem to be a standard for the temples in the Angkor Wat complex. After Angkor Wat, we continued on with the tuk-tuk ride through the gates to Angkor Thom, another ancient city with other temples. The site really is huge, with only forests and temples, and the occasional monkey. We followed the small route through the Angkor Wat complex. Highly recommend. There are so many temples that you even pass by smaller ones that are not really worth visiting. They are not a part of the tour. With the scorching heat and the longer clothes you have to wear for the temples, the tuk-tuk rides were a fun change, a breath of fresh air with a view. Even though we had a private tuk-tuk driver throughout the site, we still walked a lot and did many steps, steep, high, unstable steps. Some temples are really well hidden in the jungle, others are overthrown by jungle. The trees are growing through the temples. The roots are enormous, breaking the stones. It looks like scenes from movies. I think Tomb Raider was either shot here or at least inspired by the temples here. It's really impressive. Knowing that these old, big, thick trees are so much younger than the temples. We finished this hot day by a dip in the pool of our hotel and a little bit of crocheting, topped off by a fresh cocktail. We went to bed quite early to prepare ourselves for the sunrise at Angkor Wat. We were really happy that we already saw the place the previous day in the light, because finding your way there in the dark and knowing where you should stand or sit to have a good view would have been way more difficult without the knowledge of the previous day. Even a bit creepy. We found a good spot to sit because the sunrise takes a while everyone else was cramped together at the pools to get this reflecting shot. I took inspiration from the famous, I think it's Bali spot, where there is no reflection pool but they use a mirror. Instead, I used my boyfriend's phone. Not bad, right? After the sunrise, the place was really crowded, much more than later in the morning like yesterday. But hot tip, at the back of the temple, it is really peaceful and it's a perfect photo spot. There was almost no one when we were there. This day, we went for the big tour, connecting the temples that are located a bit further away. I'm surprised that even though there are trees growing on the temples, there is barely any moss or grass or wheat growing on the temples. We did find this one spot. This is more of how I imagined the stones would look like after all those years. But this was more of an exception. I don't know if they cleaned the stones maybe? The temple Pran Khan is located in the middle of a big water basin filled with lotus flower on the surface. The water really differentiates it from the other temples on the site. Even though the temples resembled each other, they also had their defined unique characteristics. I really like the look of the more rounded towers. This temple is situated an hour away from the rest. It is very well preserved with many detailed wall carvings. We didn't take a guide for the Angkor Wat complex, mostly because we wanted to do it at our own pace and be present in the surroundings, just taking in the grand feelings without always focusing on the small details. But there are so many guides walking around with other groups that you can easily pick up some little facts here and there. I am definitely an eavesdropper. Also, I like that the temples are not filled with stands and railings for the tourists to maintain the safety like they often do in Europe. You really get to see and experience the temple like it was meant to be, but of course you need to be really careful, obviously. We finished off by watching the sunset on top of this temple. It's a very known spot for sunset watching, so we definitely were not alone. But if you haven't noticed by now, I am a very big fan of sunsets. It's just so calming to me. Once the sunset is over, everyone is cramming down the same set of stairs to get back to their ride. Suddenly, it feels like an extreme tourist distraction when you start hearing the music also, begging for some contribution at the exit. The next morning, quite early, it was time to leave Cambodia again, but still not the end of the trip. We added a small city trip to Singapore because the flights were easier and cheaper to go back home. We spent a total of 1.5 days and 1 night in Singapore. The airport in Siem Reap is very new and pretty small. I think it was opened in 2024 and we were the first flight of the day, so we were there way too early. We were the only ones going through security. All the gates were empty. The sun was still really low. We ordered some breakfast to kill the time, and because we were hungry, waiting for our airplane to arrive. I said this before, but transport time is crochet time. This is the moment to get further in the project and get towards the finalization. The first backstrap is done, but I'm struggling somewhat with the center pull of the ball. A lot of tangling. When you arrive at the Singapore airport, you immediately get treated with gorgeous surroundings. There is a huge waterfall surrounded by multiple floors of plant-covered alleys in the airport. It's called The Jewel. We dropped our backpacks at the hotel and took the metro to Marina Bay. This is an underground, extravagant shopping center with luxurious shops connected to the famous Marina Bay Hotel that consists of 3 towers with an enormous boat on top. We arrived outside by walking through the Apple shop. I would have wanted a room in the hotel, but the prices at that time were crazy expensive. Every room has a balcony and there is an infinity pool all the way on the top. It is right next to the Bay Gardens, which is perfect for a stroll through these mushroom-like structures. At night we watched the light show on the Marina Bay. Pretty cool. They nebulize a water screen on which they project a light source. There is also a light show at the gardens, which was also fun to see, and then we went up to the bar on top of the Marina Bay for the view and to drink our second cocktail of the trip. The light show from up here was a lot smaller, but still nice to see because you can see the depth better from here. All the surroundings are well lit up in the dark here. It's definitely a big change from Vietnam and that small part of Cambodia. The next day we went to see Little India with the colorful Hindu temples. It was really crowded by actual Hindus carrying out their prayers and rituals, which is really interesting to see as I don't see this often. Also, we couldn't skip Chinatown. We visited the well-decorated Buddhist temple with thousands of Buddha statues. No exaggeration, thousands of Buddha statues. And then walked around in the crowded little streets. Apart from temples, we also saw an Anglistic church, which was very modern, white, and elegant. When continuing our walk to the Meridian, it started absolutely pouring rain. After waiting for a while and realizing it wasn't going to stop so quickly, we found an underground network to get closer to where we wanted. It's really impressive how much of the city is connected to an underground network. We walked through shopping malls, through hotels. They even have working escalators to get you under streets. They are very well prepared for heavy rain. We finished off the day at the Marina Bay Shopping Center and the food court inside. A very, very busy food court, must I say. It's a war to find a place to sit here. We saw the Jewel again in the dark, and there was a light show going on, giving it many different colors. We also went down a level to see how the water is collected. It's really well done because it looks like you can touch it like a chocolate fountain, but it's actually behind glass. There are other artworks as well in the airport, depending on the terminal you have to take. Strangely, the security happens at the gate itself. This makes it very efficient and less stressful, but it's the first time I see something like this. We boarded the plane and that's where I started to feel bad. I got really sick on this flight. I slept maybe an hour or two, but I spent most of my time in the back of the plane at the toilets. I was nauseous, really not the best flying experience. So obviously I also didn't crochet a thing. So I'm sad to announce that I haven't been able to finish the top on holiday, but it is mostly finished. So here I am a few days later, back at home, looking at the progress I have made and the sizing. I continued working on it in the sofa, watching Black Doves on Netflix. I also finished the second ball of yarn a few rows before finishing the top, and with a bit of the third one, I am now finished with the entire panel. Only need to attach both sides, the straps, and maybe add a border for a finished neat look. Hey, it did it. So I actually think it fits perfectly well. It has a good length. Everything looks marvelous, honestly. But I'm really not confident in these straps. They are not as stable as you would like them, and I think the top could just be pulled down without any difficulties, really. I may have made the straps too small. So I'm definitely going to add a border just to make sure it's more stable. So here it is without the borders yet. Also, I've been thinking that this would be beautiful in a dress form as well. Like the pattern is really made for it. So I think maybe I might do that in the future. It's gorgeous. I'm starting off with a smaller hook size with regards to the one I used before. I am going to attach the yarn at the armpit, make my way up using a slip stitch. Giving it a border. see how structured this part is? There is a lot less flexibility in this part in comparison to here, where everything is so sloppy and rough. So I'm going to add the same border on this side, and then I will also add the border on the neckline. And here it is, completely finished with the border on the neckline and the armholes. I'm really happy with how this one turned out. It fits really well and it's an easy color and shape to wear, both like this and layered over a turtleneck, for example. I hope you enjoyed this long travel vlog and see you next time for the next video. Bye bye!